Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clarity 16.0.2, Supportability and Feature Training. My name is Dave Sprague. In this section, we're going to review several adoption and usability enhancements. The section will also cover Clarity improvements in support of the WCAG accessibility standards. So I'm going to break this down into two buckets, really usability and accessibility. So first, from a usability perspective, we've made a few updates in this release. First, the view options page content has been reordered to be consistent across timeline, board, and grid views. Now, this is a global change for the way view options is laid out. We've also improved the user experience when replacing the name of a saved view or a hierarchy metric name. Essentially, the dialog no longer closes unexpectedly. The third item here is the user experience for discovering the details flyout has been improved with the addition of a right-click action from within the board, timeline, and grid views. In fact, the board has a kind of a three-dot menu, actions menu, so it's a little bit different, but the timeline and grid views are certainly right action. We got a lot of feedback from customers saying, it's for those of us that are novice users in some cases, exploring that, having to drag across the page to find the details area could be improved. Now, from an accessibility perspective, we've updated the banner messages that pop up typically when you're exporting a CSV file that includes more than 500 records, or you're importing investments into a roadmap. A couple of examples of the banner messages that are now accessible via keyboard and screen reader. So they'll be announced. The content in those messages is announced. Also, popover confirmations are now accessible via keyboard and screen reader. Those are most related to kind of you're going to delete something and the system says, are you sure you want to do that? So why is this important? Well, each of the accessibility improvements are needed to drive that adoption because organizations demand compliance with accessibility standards to make sure that their users have the proper tools to view and access company-specific details. And also from a usability perspective, the Clarity UX and development teams continue to deliver on that promise to improve the overall visual and usability experience in many functional areas. So each of those accessibility improvements are also improving the overall experience for all users. And from an accessibility perspective, we always take into consideration visual design, such as like color contrast, responsive design, such as these pop-up windows, or zoom requirements. Of course, keyboard control for keyboard input and tab order is very important. And last but not least is screen reader support, allowing the user to be communicating with the screen reader, informing them of where they are and what the page looks like. So view options. On the left-hand side, there's a collection of the view option panels, and that represents 1602. On the right side of the page, this represents 1601. As you can see on the right-hand side of the page, the area dedicated to periods, start period, end period, and totals is a little disjointed. And on the left-hand side of the screen is merely just saying, we've taken a look at this, we're improving the usability, and no matter where you are in your timeline view, a board view, or a grid view, when you go to view options, it'll look the same. So eliminate some of the learnings or searching around for information. Here's an example of the roadmap timeline view with a right-click action on a given roadmap item. Before, it only presented you with the delete action, but now you have the open details action, which will do just that. It'll open up the flyout. Now, this is just a roadmap item. roadmap timeline view. This change is global throughout any grid, any board, and any timeline that has a corresponding flyout associated with it. That right-click action will simplify how you get to some of the underlying details. From an accessibility perspective, this is an example of the screen reader announcing, the fact that a particular action is taking place. So the example on the left-hand side is you've got a staff. You're in the staffing area. You're performing a CSV export, and in the case where a file is more than 500 records, it's going to download it and send you a notification when it becomes available. So this is the screen reader page there, the window announcing just that. On the right-hand side is just a very simple example of the import process. You're on a roadmap grid and you want to bring some more investments in, whether they're custom investments, projects, or ideas, but nevertheless, the system is announcing what is in the banner. Also, the popover confirmations content is now keyboard and screen reader accessible. The screen reader will announce the popover content. Focus is established on the popover, allowing the user to perform the actions. And in this case, it's asking you, do you really want to delete something? I just happen to be in a pick list, and it'll give you just that. It'll give you a readout of the screen reader, of the popover content, with telling you you're on the cancel button or you're on the delete button. All right. So another bit of interesting news, hot off the press, is the Clarity Modern UX Vpat documentation is now available. It is available for download today from our documentation site. If you go into the accessibility features in Clarity, you will be able to get to that link. Now, this Vpat indicates our conformance with Section 508, WCAG, specifically 2.1, level A and double A, and the EN 301549 standards. So we're very happy to announce the availability of this document for you to share within your organizations. Now, reminder, the Vpat is for Clarity's modern UX, and our accessibility initiative is and remains focused on those capabilities available in the configurable grid within the modern UX. And that, just as an example of capabilities that are now there documented, is things like data entry, sorting, column configuration, view options, pick lists, export to CSV, are a number of capabilities that are available in the grid. So we're very excited to have this document ready for your internal consumption. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that we're going to demonstrate. We'll take a look at the usability options, just the view options, updates, and the reordering of some of the content. We'll go through a quick use case of saving a view and changing the name. And then we'll use the new right-click action to help you discover the details flyout. And then we'll close out the demo with a brief keyboard and screen reader experience using the popover confirmations. Okay, so let's get to that. Bring up the page. All right, so we are on a roadmap timeline. I'm just going to go open view options. And as you can see within the timeline section, period, start period, end period, and totals, both sum of periods and grand totals, is available for your use. I'm going to go click on the board view as well. And the view options will stay open, and just merely to point out that this is consistent as you're navigating through and you see the same experience. I'll just go to the grid very quickly. You can see the same experience there. Of course, there's other elements that are here, such as per period metrics, that are relevant to the user in the grid, and so therefore in the lower section. Now, like I said, this is a global change. So I'll just go to projects real quick, and we're on a grid view here. You can see the section that we're talking about, period, start period, end period, and totals. It's the same. The board view is the same even over here. And I'll let that refresh for 1 second. And then the timeline view, of course. So I just merely come over here. I know it looks like it might be repetitive, but just wanted to state that that is a global change that was made throughout the application. So I'm going to go back to roadmaps, and we're going to land on the grid. And I'll use my right click action, and I have, before, obviously this wasn't here, I had to click on the details tab on the right. I just, for that highlighted row, just select open details and you're good to go. This is also just the roadmap list view, right? The list of available roadmaps. So we'll dive into a given roadmap, and we're on the grid, of course, and we just showed the right click action, open details, even at the individual, at the roadmap item list level. I can go to my board view. This is just a little bit different. The action menu is here, the 3 dots that you see in the upper right corner of the cards. That just exposes the open details, and there you have it. So it's quick, easy access. Back on the timeline, the right-click action will bring up open details, and in the prior release, you just had delete. So all you have to do is hit open details, and you're good. So it's a really nice usability capability. One of the other things I want to show you here is the view options. So in the past, if you wanted to come in and go save as, and a typical user would, attempt to highlight, and kind of the mouse, you see my mouse is dragging over here. You wouldn't like totally stop right on the money. If you did that, you wouldn't experience a problem. But if you were just like many users, you would drag it over here and attempt to rename it, and this dialog would just disappear. So we've fixed that problem. And the same thing has been resolved in the hierarchy workspace with respect to saving a view over here. You would come over and click off, and there you have it. It stays. So we're in a good shape there as far as that particular fix. All right, so we're going to come back to the roadmap again. And we'll go into our roadmap. I will click on a grid. And what I want to do now is kind of shift gears, and I'm going to turn on my screen reader, and I'm hopeful that it conveys the voice that's being read out is hearable from you to you, the audience. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my keyboard to navigate and then try and delete a line item from this row, and experience the popover behavior in terms of screen reader and keyboard use. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screen reader, and I'll just be using my keyboard from here. All right. So that was a fairly brief demonstration, but it showed off the fact that the popover message in this popover confirmation in this scenario from a roadmap perspective was responding to the keyboard and had the proper focus for the end user to navigate to the appropriate actions within the pop-up, and it was the screen reader was announcing to the user what those actions were. Okay, so that concludes the demo. I guess before I move on, I normally would have shown off the banner functionality, but from a demo perspective, the banner just it's too lengthy of a workflow from a demo perspective, so we will save that for another day. So that concludes the usability and adoption session. I really appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.